Hello everyone, I'm Lydia Ruth and welcome to Homemaking Radio, and I hope you get a few things done while you listen today. I have this vision of making a perfectly seamless speech where one subject just rolls gracefully into the other and I don't have to break things up, and but I can not do that, so we'll be having some subjects today. First of all, I hope that you are dressed, and I hope that when you see my videos pop up, you go and get dressed before you view them or listen to them and get busy with your work at home. They are a work as you listen type of broadcast. And the reason I hope that is if I were to have a real class, I would want you to have real class, dress up and come and honor the others that are there by looking your best and being your best while we talk about some of these things for the home. Now, of course, we all have very similar goals. We want happy, peaceful homes. We want beautiful homes and clean houses. And you know, home is a combination of house and home and those who dwell in it. So we almost can't distinguish between the house and the home, but we do know there's a difference. And so for the home, I believe that the beginning should be getting dressed up and getting prepared for your home. And I suggest you teach your children to do this. Bathe and dress and have a nice beginning. You know, there's so much going on in the world, and there's not a day goes by that someone doesn't tell me something about the most outrageous news reports, and I can do nothing about it. I can't change it. I can't even soothe anybody's troubled heart over it, it seems. But one thing that you can do, that you can change, and even if you're having some problems that you want to overcome that involve your character or your habits or self-control, and maybe you have you want to lose some weight or you want to get stronger. You know, like most of us, we want to get stronger, thinner, and smarter and younger. And those aren't things you can do just like that, but you can change your clothes. You can fix your hair. You can change that. And then another thing we can do that I often mention is we can change our house and make it a calm and inspirational living space. And if you're having trouble getting started, I would suggest just walk around, pick up a few things, and maybe move something, and pretty soon your mind clicks in and your creativity comes, and before you know it, you've got a corner cleaned up, or you've got something redone, or something put away, or something cleaned. And so I suggest that we make lists, because a list is a guide for us, and we almost feel like it's a relief because all that burden of thinking is on this paper. It's on your piece of paper, the list, and now you can stop getting upset and getting all tense in your upper back and your shoulder blades and getting all that awful pressure in your mind, and you can look at your list. You put it on your list, then you get it out of your head and on the list and start concentrating one thing at a time. A list is really important. Even if it's the same old thing, it's always nice to put it on the list and follow that instead of going through thinking of the 10 things that must be done all the time. You just think of the one thing that you're doing right now on your list. And also, it occurred to me the other day, someone told me once, my husband, Mr. S., makes coffee for himself in the morning, and he always buys the absolute, most exotic kind he can, because he doesn't drink much, but a little, maybe a half a cup. So he just buys the absolute best, and the smell that it creates, the scent that it creates, is wonderful. And I heard someone tell me that the smelling it is just as beneficial as drinking it. I don't drink it much, but I love the smell of it, so I make sure that I put some in one of those filters and a little drip cup and make a little bit every day just because of the smell of it. And who knows what people used to use it for anyway. Maybe they didn't drink it. Maybe they just smelled it. Or maybe they used it for other things. But it does have a nice, comforting scent. So, I also wanted to say that getting ready and thinking about modern events and the things that you're pounded with constantly is a time for gratitude. Look around and pick the easiest simple thing to be grateful for. And it can be anything, especially as you grow more vital. You're glad to wake up and you're still here and you're still alive. And you might have a pile of things to do, but that's okay. It's better than the alternative. So it's better than being sick, And I have had a terrible cough, and I still have it. And I had to miss the worship service, and I was really sorry about that. I still can't be around people, and I don't even know if I can get through this without coughing. So as you get more vital, as you get older, ladies, sometimes these coughs take a lot longer. Some other things, some other illness just seems to take a lot longer. You don't bounce back as well. But I think I'm going to do an experiment on myself and try to bounce back. Now, the bulletin, the church bulletin, I brought it home from over there later on, and this is from the week that I missed the services. And it says, it's called Phones and Bibles. And some of it, yes, I'm not going to judge anybody by having a phone, because I have one, and we have always used it for the good and for the sake of Christ. And so anything that's new, we always want to make sure that it's used for good. So what if we carried it around in our purses or pockets? It says, I wonder what would happen if we treated our Bibles like we treat our cell phones. Now, we used to call it the Word, or the Word of God, or the Good Book. And I wanted to remind you that Bible is not a special word. It just means a collection of books, or a book of books. So it in itself, the word Bible is not particularly holy, but when we say Bible, we really mean the Word of God. That's what it's referred to now. So, if we were to treat our Bibles like we treat our cell phones, what if we carried it around in our purses or pockets? And I do remember a time when I first began homeschooling, we'd be reading something and trying to discuss it and trying to discover its meaning, and not just its meaning, but how we could apply it in our lives. And we would have to go somewhere, and the kids would still have theirs open and talking about it in the car. And then as we went into the grocery store, they were walking around with me, and they had them open, and they were still talking. What if we carried it around in our purses or pockets? What if we turned back to go get it if we forgot it? What if we flipped through it several times a day? Now, I had a mother-in-law who carried a small one in her purse, and she knew how to find things very quickly. Sort of, she met someone that was slacking off, and not attending the worship, or had gone into a less than desirable lifestyle. She knew where to turn to it and stop them when she saw them in public and read things to them. What if we flipped through it several times a day? What if we used it to receive messages from the text? Now, here's the good news. You can actually get a subscription, and I believe it's free, for a Bible text to come on your phone, on your text, every day. And that's really good, because we need good news. We don't need bad news. And I wanted to remind you that the anti-propaganda law for the media and for all communications was lifted or abolished back in, I would say probably 1990s, maybe 1980s. And so now we can't trust anything that the media says or the press says. And we've got to even really be careful of the so-called conservative press, because all they do is talk about what the legacy press talks about and try to refute it. They're just all arguing about the same subject. And so, and even the Christian broadcasts, you got to be careful of those too, because they've had their subject chosen for them, and the propaganda is large on some of these, and you can't always trust them. And we have caught them, especially one of the advantages of getting more vital is you can look back and see where the Legacy Press started a story that wasn't true, and it was found out later through investigation that it was just a big hype to get everybody upset. And they will, when you get tired of a certain kind of tragedy, let's say fires reporting, and people are just like ho-hum and they don't pay attention, then they create something that is even more horrific, like people getting lost down old wells or something like that. They will push these stories until they've run their course and people are just tired of it. And so you've got to be careful, because you can't trust the media, press, and especially new reports that come out. You can't trust them as the gospel truth. You just cannot trust them. And what if we treated it like we couldn't live without it, and we gave it to our children as gifts, and we used it as we traveled, and we used it in case of emergency? Now, the next bulletin that came out had all these emergency numbers, and they were, I don't have one with me, but they were the verses and the numbers and the chapter numbers of what you could use if you felt anxiety, what you could use if there was a tragedy, what you could use, and you'd be kept quite busy going to all these verses. So, unlike our cell phones, we don't ever have to worry about our Bibles being disconnected, because Jesus already paid the bill. Isn't that interesting? And, I might just type that in for you on the blog. And if you're new here or if you're old here, please go and click the link in the description box below this video and go over to the page on which I've embedded this video. You can watch it without any interruptions. And I wish I had said that in the beginning. Before too much time goes on, please stop this video and go click the link in the description box and go to the page, scroll down where you see that video, and please watch it on my blog, because I'm just making it for that. Now, I have a lot to talk to you about today. And I talked about increasing our thankfulness, especially in times of stress. Now, you have to realize how bad stress is for you. And you also want to maybe change some habits at home. But first of all, if you're not used to getting ready and getting dressed before you start something, then I would really suggest you do it. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was, how we look to others, because you can almost lift up society by the way that you dress. And if you're tired of the way everybody looks, maybe you could be a leader in just, caring about that and looking your best. And one of the ladies that I have followed for years, but she's not our type. She's not like the homemaker, country woman sort of homeschool type, but she does a beautiful video on being high class. And of course she's rich, and she kind of walks amongst the city folks, European rich sort of thing, and we don't have to worry about that stuff like that, because even in the home we wear what we want, and we've got our idea of what works for us. But her principles are so good, and she had one recently called "Why Do We Look So Sloppy in 2023?" And it was such a good video. But of course, it started a long time ago. I called it Slop Chick way back in the 1970s. People were complaining about this slop chick look, and even the newspapers had articles about it. And it was such a good video that I want to make sure I put a link there. Now, don't say, well, this doesn't apply to me. The principles of it apply to you. She says people show way too much skin. The clothing doesn't look good on them, the wrong color, it's sliding around, it's, hanging in a very... I'll tell you something about the Victorian clothing. you wouldn't have seen the Victorian woman tugging at anything because it was made to fit. And once it was on, and it didn't have to be adjusted. They weren't pulling their skirts up, they weren't tucking anything, and it was all there. And I have made a new dress using an older pattern, but I always like to try out new sleeves, so I've experimented with some of these Victorian sleeves today. But this is just cotton, and I'll wear it. It probably will look a bit outrageous in public, but I'm going to wear it at home, and I like the color. It makes me feel good, and I'll put an apron over it. I'll put some pictures on for you. But I will include that Anna Bay video because she talked about how people would show up at weddings in sports clothes or even look like they've just been swimming. And I've been talking about that for years. But in general, I think that her approach to it was really, really good. But what she didn't understand was that people buy stuff off the rack. If they don't know how to sew and they don't have good solid principles regarding clothing, they will just go and see what's on the rack at Walmart and just buy it because that's what there is, and it's proclaimed as stylish, and they'll just wear it. And so we have in later years the manufacturers and the designers collaborated to make things that didn't have buttons or very many pieces or seams and no sleeves, because sleeves would have to require fitting and different sizes, and it's just a one size fits all type of clothing. And so even back in the days when the president's wives were real careful with what they wore, there was not the opportunity to dress down so badly. It's been going on for a long time. It's been deteriorating since the Victorian era. And so, but we can make a difference, you know. We don't have to depress ourselves. We're not trying to impress the world, but we don't have to depress ourselves. We can dress for the home, and the homemaker can be known as the most happily dressed person, and dressed in such a way that it inspires her especially. So when we get to the homemaking part, I'll let you go on the web and search for what you need to find out how to do something, or if there's a particular problem in your cleaning or arranging or just making your home easier to live in. You can find those things on YouTube and on many other places. And one of the things that I meant to tell you about this is that people used to search. They would type in a word and it would all come up on whatever search engine they were using, and then they would go down and find the subject that they thought would answer their question, and they would go research it, and they'd find other subjects, and then they'd find references to books and everything like that. But people aren't searching anymore. What they're doing, we have found, at least here at the Manse, they are dependent on social media. So they've got texts, and they've got Facebook or whatever it's called now, and they watch to see what their friends put up there, and they click the links that are provided for them, and they don't actually do a research. Back in the day, we used to, and this is what we taught in homeschooling, how to research. You find an interest, and then you find all the places where that interest is published or mentioned or written about, and you collect all your data, and you write all about it, and then you put a bibliography in the back, which means a list of all the books you used to write your little story or your paper. But now, people aren't searching. So what I mentioned, exercise for health in the home. I can't send you the exact link of what I use, but I would like you to type in stretch exercises or exercises for, and whatever it is that's bothering you. Belly fat, anxiety, lack of motivation, depression. There's something for everything. There's even stretch exercises for pain. There's stretch exercises for any kind of malady you have, or just for inspiration, or for clarity, mental clarity. And so you type that in, and some page will have an illustrated page of how to move yourself around and give yourself some relief or some advantages from the exercise. And you will also find many videos on it. And so that is very important that you as a homemaker, especially if you're homeschooling, learn to teach your children how to be autodidactic, self-taught by finding out where to find things, look for things. For example, if you have a library in your home with just a big shelf full of books and someone wants to know something, they go to look and see what books might have that in it. They don't just wait for someone to tell them the answer. And when you get someone who is questioning a lot, and you find that they're using up a lot of your time, and I don't mean your children or in your home, but other people, they want to use up a lot of your time answering questions. Especially if you're a homemaker or a homeschooler, they want to know everything about it, and they want you to tell them because it's just easier than looking it up. You need to encourage them to go do a search. Now, I don't know why people are reluctant to do a search. You just type in the word or the question, and many different things come up, and you'll get more than you actually need, and it will be satisfactory. Rather than, and I often thought that it was probably pretty rude to pick someone's brain over something too much, unless you've arranged to talk to each other and it's agreeable on both sides. To pick someone's brain too much and I honestly think in some things like homemaking, I can't tell you anything because it's so personal that it's something you have to experience, and you have to figure it out for yourself. You have to figure out what kind of routine works best for you, how you get things done, what kind of music you want to listen to while you do it, whether you work better in the morning or the afternoon, what is your finest hour of the day, when is the best time to do one thing or another. And it is something that requires your participation and experience. And you can go to look at sites that talk about homemaking. There's lots of them on YouTube that have Clean With Me and ideas for cleaning up a space or making your house look bigger or more comfortable. You can really enjoy those. But ultimately, I used to buy a lot of books on decor, and I discovered that there would be a picture that I just loved or adored, and so I'd try to imitate it somewhere in my house, and it just didn't look good at all, because it's all dependent on, it looks good in a photograph, might not look good for you because of this different way a light shines in your room, or the atmosphere of the room, or the size of the room, or just the different things doesn't always look good. And for example, I have a friend that wanted to go on this white craze where everything was white, and she didn't study it out too carefully, but it was quite the trend at the time, so she did everything in white, but she wasn't watching that there were different whites that you had to have, and that the light shines on different things different ways, and she said that the color just didn't work for her. So in a picture and in books, yes, they're exciting and they're helpful in homemaking, but ultimately you're going to have to do your own research, and you're going to have to figure it out for yourself. And if you're just starting out, that might be quite a challenge. So I wanted to cover that, and also for homemaking itself. If you make a list of what needs to be done, first of all, what's the most important thing that needs to be done besides appearance first, and follow that as best you can, then there will be time to do things that you want to do. Like, for instance, I know you don't want to spend all your time cleaning and being in the kitchen. Maybe you do, but some people don't. And so maybe you'd like to do something else for a while. Maybe you'd like to read or sew or garden or do something else, so you don't want to be in there all the time. So you'll learn how to manage your time. I'd like to also say that a change of habits or establishing new habits can be very helpful in the home because you're going to be there a lot. The years will come and go, and it's nice to have different interests. And I have several young friends who have had changes of interest. And in the old days, they would say, "Oh, you're not stable. You don't stick with any one thing, you know." And but that's applying to interests and hobbies. And so one young lady told me that she just decided, and she wasn't married yet, and she just decided she needed something in her life to perk her up every day. So she decided she was going to get one of those little journals and draw a picture every day, or get online and find a class that was free, so that she could learn to draw and paint and just do something like that every day. And it's just always nice to try, like, how about a new tea tasting every day, a new flavor of tea every day, just some suggestions of changing up your life a little bit and developing some new ideas. And you don't have to stay doing that all your life. And or it's like finding some new knowledge or some knowledge you don't know, to find out how something is made or how something is done. Or some of my favorites are how to change up a recipe and give it more of a distinct flavor of another country or something like that, or studying herbs and spices. And you don't have to do that all your life. You just go through and have different interests. And so that's very important, to have new habits that you develop. And these things are very, very helpful because they give you something to look forward to after some of the major work is done, which can be tedious. In fact, this is why I have you here, because we are going to listen to me while you do something that is rather repetitive or tedious. Let's play Remember When. I started this last time. I thought it was amusing. Do you remember when the only labels on clothing were the label of the catalog you got it from, or the manufacturer or you got it from, but it wasn't a person's name particularly? And I don't know if any of you remember that, but you couldn't get a handbag or a blouse or anything that was a label or had any status to it. In fact, back in the old days, in the 1950s, ladies, do you remember when we had a white blouse as a standard part of our wardrobe? Every young girl and young lady wanted a white blouse because it went with everything. And we had these standard things, and it didn't have to be, there were no labels. You could not buy a something Von something label. And so we would just depend on what we could find in the catalogs or what we could make. A white blouse was just the most supreme thing you could have. You can look back at the photographs in the school albums of the 1950s to see how many girls were dressed in these white blouses. They weren't Victorian, but they were white blouses. It was considered very chic and yet feminine and updated. But do you remember when there were no labels on anything? That was interesting, especially with the denim things. The denim jeans were just jeans, and it was I believe the word jeans was the label. Probably the brand was called jeans. And or Levi's. Levi's was a label. Yes, that's right. But it wasn't the status that it is today. And a handbag was a handbag, and you didn't have to have anything that looked like it was expensive or anything like that. And being homemakers, we can do what we want. We're free from all those societal restrictions. We are free from some of the things that you probably couldn't get away with if you were in a higher society. I'm not saying we're a low society, but I am saying we have our own. We have our own culture here at home. So we develop our own culture, and our culture just involves things like being neat and tidy and wearing things that are cheerful and in good taste for the home, but not sloppy. And so, but we don't need the labels. We have our own labels. You know, if you make a dress, this is got your label. You can order these little labels that have your name on it that says created by or sewn by, and sew them into your garments. So we have our own labels. And we don't have to worry too much about that, about some of those things. And some of us are just happy to have enough to wear, and just really grateful, you know. So now let us move on to something else. And I'd like to do this seamlessly, but it doesn't appear that I can. And I want to read to you out of Jane Austen Diet, because Brian Kozlowski did such a marvelous job on the mind-body connection in his chapter called Health and Happiness. And he talks about the injury of stress. And that's why I tell you, the latest news and everything, it's all going to be solved. And when they're finished with that and they've got you all upset, they're going to invent something even more outrageous. And it'll all involve you getting on some kind of anti-anxiety medicine or getting therapy. And I was talking about that to someone in my family. And we were both observing that we have a great God who is also our life coach. And the scriptures are our coach. And it's our therapy. So what do we do when there is anxiety and stress? Well, we look it up. And he tells us, our therapist tells us not to worry. And the reason so is more than just, oh, don't worry. There's a lot more to it. And Brian Kozlowski kind of explains some of it here when he talks about the injury of stress. The injury of stress. It just causes injury. Have you ever been around a person? You know how at the end of these videos I like to talk about people problems. I don't know why. And I know you're all cheating and you're scrolling forward to that last part. But if you ever known somebody that was so verbally injurious, like, and not swearing and not running you down or anything, but just contradicting or hasty, sharp replies, or just a kind of a cutting sort of voice and response to everything that kind of draws your mood down, you know, and it can stay with you maybe a long time. And he talks about the injurious nature of stress. And you know, of course, I would like you to look a word up because I want you to be autodidactic. You look up a word today, you might even want to stop the video and go look for cortisol, cortisol. And talking about the media and the stress we all live under. And some of us in the 1950s, we were born in the 1950s, and it was almost as if the world said, welcome to the world, kid. From now on, you will never be happy. You will be worried about everything. You will be frightened to death over everything. Your whole life consists of fright. You will always have a tenseness in your chest and in your upper back. And you'll never be able to catch your breath because life is just going to be one scary thing after another. Children's books will all be scary. The movies and the stories will all be scary. And the news will all be scary. And the future will be scary. And so they keep people in this perpetual stillness of scariness so that we're not thinking, we're not planning ahead. We're not thinking about our future. We're not thinking about, I would like to get married and have children and have a house, and I would like to go on adventures with my family, and we'd like to have a career in something that we're really interested in. My family and I, we'd like to have a business together. We're not thinking of those things because we're waiting for the world to settle down. But don't ever do that, because that's what they want you to do. They want you to be constantly in a state of being stunned, so that now in your fear and the anxiety, you'll be led to do anything that they want you to do, and you'll say, well, yeah, I'll go on this route here. You plan this out for me because it gives me some peace. And so what we want to do is work on that, because apparently this cortisol develops when there is any kind of worry or stress. And the best thing you can do, and what it does is it affects your your bodily functions, your liver, and it damages you. And so what you should do when there is some kind of stress is the first thing you should do is get up. Get up and walk around. So that abolishes that sitting in front of the television listening to all this bad news. And you can get bad news in anything that you're in. Let's say you have a nice little ladies' Bible class or something. They can sit there and start chewing the rag and talking about stuff they heard on the media, and next thing you know, they brought that media right into that nice little meeting where you were going to just share a cup of tea and a verse or two and a prayer. And so with this cortisol, what you have to do, this is why some people instinctively, when they the conversation, either in a home or another association or friendship, the conversation gets disturbing, they will get up. I had a great-grandmother that apparently would, there'd be a little company in her living room, and she would go and say hi and sit for a minute, but when it got to be too strenuous for her and too much heavy stuff that she didn't want to deal with, she'd just get up and go to the kitchen for a while, and everyone knew that she did that. But you know why people will just get up is because it's very uncomfortable, and they'll just get up and leave. Do you remember the movie Persuasion from the 1990s? And was it Anne who had met this Captain Wentworth, and she had gone to an opera with friends, and she had seen him with someone else while he was there apparently, and so she just got up and left because she was so uncomfortable. And I think that's the best thing to do with cortisol. I don't think we have to sit there and take it, do you? So ladies, let me read to you out of the Jane Austen diet, and maybe you could get something done while you're listening. And there's nothing to see here because honestly, this is the first piece of fabric I've ever found where I could not find a matching teacup in my collection for it. So I can't even show you a teacup today, but I will show you the dress on the blog. If you'll go over to the blog and watch this video, let me tell you, you're going to see the other things that I have spoken of. You might see a picture of some of the books I read from, and maybe some links of, like I told you about this one website I'd like you to go to, and all the information will be there. And then you can also make a comment over there. You can make a contribution if you like, if you feel that you want to. It's not required. And so I want to read this to you, and it's from his chapter called Health and Happiness, the Mind-Body Connection. The real injurious nature of stress is how much it weakens our immune system. Now, do you know what the immune system is? It starts with your outer layer, which is your skin. That's why I object to poking it, opening it, inserting things, and inserting chemicals in it with needles. And I just think we should just get completely away from that. This is my philosophy. In a day, when you can get someone's temperature just by waving a little wand over their forehead, then it's possible that you could detect their health and help their health in other ways besides poking that very important immune system, which is your skin. And if you compromise your skin, you know, when we have a cut or scratch and maybe it gets infected or starts to swell or something like that, we're very protective of that. And so the immune system is affected, and you can have breakouts, and with stress. Sometimes you can develop a terrible flush on your face. I know I have rosacea, but I have cleverly covered it up by painting my face this morning. I have a little bit of rosacea, probably due to my ethnic origins or something like that, but I've always had a little bit. But it'll flare up worse if there's stress or if I don't feel well. And so the real injurious nature of stress is how much it weakens our immune system. Remember that. Your skin tells you, and your children's skin tells you about their health. And maintaining a healthy immune system being another essential, he says here. Chronic stress dramatically reduces our ability to fight everything from the common cold to cancer. Now, isn't that interesting? If you have a lot of stress, and sometimes you can give yourself stress, ladies, by being negative about everything, by the comments you made. Oh, not all the time. Oh, I don't think so. Oh, it's just constant. And when I was little, children used to complain about their parents because their parents were like that. Everything was no, and everything that they tried to accomplish was put down. We had parents that had been through or were going through what was called the depression, and they sure did create more depression with their attitudes. That's for sure. It says stress dramatically reduces our ability to fight everything from the common cold to cancer. Now look, that's why we have to be careful to make sure our homes have a calm and acceptably beautiful atmosphere that makes you happier to be there, that makes it a place you don't want to leave, that makes you a place that you'd rather go to than anywhere else. Pretty soon, at first, when they came out with all the shopping malls and the stores and all this glamorous stuff, it was fun to go and see them. But as we got our homes fixed up the way we liked them and started learning to prepare food and smell things the way you would in a restaurant, it started to be that everything else paled in comparison to the home. So put everything into your home. And I've often told people who spent tons of money on a vacation, put that money into redoing your bathroom. Make a spa out of it. Buy big towels. Do things that you would experience somewhere else. Do it at home. And then you can start having other experiences that don't cost so much. And you really can't take much with you when you've spent a lot. And so on such trying to, quote, get away from and go somewhere else. And so it says when there's stress, he says when there's stress, it impedes natural repair processes. Yes, because all of your blood rushes to the part of you that is enduring the stress, and then other things don't get healed. That's the way I look at it. And it impedes the natural repair processes that defend us against viruses, tumors, and inflammation. And inflammation is the biggest thing in illness. Inflammation. And that's another thing that you could maybe do a search on. I mean, a real search. What causes inflammation, and do it in the natural aspect. Home remedies, natural healing for inflammation, and also when you type in cortisol, because if you don't do and look for the natural ways to cure something, nature's way, you're going to get a lot of recommendations for the allopathic results, allopathic treatments, which are chemical, which don't work with the body and have side effects. An astounding 75 to 90% of all doctor's visits are now estimated to be stress and inflammation related. So when you see your breathing has stopped and you're not really able to take a breath, go ahead and search for one of those exercises or stretches for chest tightness or for anxiety or for breathing, and there will be maybe 3 or 4 drawings of exercises and the positions to take to get rid of that, and you'll be amazed. And they're not like 20 jumping jacks or anything like that. It's just one movement for 1 minute. And I really love the new physical therapy type exercises because it knows more about the body. It knows more about how the mind and the ache in your shoulder and everything is connected to other things. In fact, it can be, they say it can be other things that, like, maybe you need to drink some lemon juice or something like that and have a cleanse. And so over 200 years ago, Jane Austen was reflecting these statistics with staggering accuracy. See, people always knew there's nothing new under the sun. People always knew about healing and disease. Most illnesses in Austen world have a corresponding nervous component. Emma recognizes a nervous part of her complaint when her friend Harriet suffers from a severe cold and sore throat. Now, I don't like to leave you here, but I forgot to bring something that I wanted to show you, and I wanted to do this show and tell very badly. So I'll be right back. Okay, kids, I'm back. I hope you were well behaved while I was not in the room. I have recently I've been wanting a set of Jane Austen books, and there were several stories that weren't published or weren't finished, but I got this set recently, and I'm so happy. And it was from Regency Marketplace, and they sell it takes you to Amazon. And so each book approximately costs a little less than $7 each. So there's 6 books here, and it was about $42. But when you divide it up, they're about $6 each, and it's called Flexi Cover. So that means that the cover is kind of like leather, you know, and it's real flexible, and I like that a lot. And so I wanted you to know I got my wish. I had been on my wish list, and I went ahead and got it. And then I ordered Santin. Now, Santin was where Jane Austen she was very concerned about health. I believe she was probably had bouts of poor health herself. But Santin was a story of how there was a couple that wanted to create a beach resort so that people who were in poor health could restore their health, and they could run on the beach, and they'd join a program, and they would run, and then they would have a special breakfast, and they would have tea time and all this stuff, which is what we're doing here, isn't it? Like if I were to take you on a few hours of R&R, that's what I would do. We wouldn't run on the beach, but we might stretch, and we'd have a wee spot of tea, and we would maybe read, and I would get your cortisol level down. But I wanted to explain a little bit about Santin, because it was an unfinished book, and so many authors have put their version out and just sullied it really badly. But this author here, she said she made a statement that she was not going to do it without the style. She was going to do it in the style of Austen, and not in the way that it would be shocking to people, so that it would end the way that Jane Austen would have ended it. And so she has a little piece in the back where she explains her system and how she, what her standards were to finish this novel. She said how did Jane Austen intend to continue this novel after the final scene before she passed away? Her intentions over plot presented no great stumbling block. She has only one plot at her disposal, that her social range is tiny, that nobody dies on stage, and there are no calamities. She knew nothing of politics, disregarded the Napoleonic Wars, and never revealed a conversation unless a woman was present. And so she explains this, and then says that she attempted to write it in such a way that it was not shocking. So I added this to it, and I'm really proud of my little set of books from the Regency Marketplace online. I don't know if I think it's a company in Colorado. So I'm really proud of that. And since I didn't have a teacup, I got to show you my new books. So now I have maybe 10 minutes left. And one of the reasons I don't make the short videos is, you notice I don't get back here very often. If I could come every day, maybe they would be shorter, but I don't get to speak to you very much. And if it is too long, you can always stop it and start again. And So here he had talked about, Brian Kozlowski had talked about in the Jane Austen Diet. He has other books that he has written too. I have not read them. I've just been too absorbed in this. If I had a school at Ashcombe, like in Wives and Daughters, I had a school, this would be one of the textbooks you would have to have. And I would create a workbook for it, or I'd make you make your own workbook, and we would explore it together. If you're alone, or you're lonely, or all your family is gone or far away, I would really, really suggest you put yourself on some courses. Just make some stuff up and do some reading and some writing about things that you have been doing. And he talks about how the injury of stress goes even deeper than that. That's why I say that these news, I made the mistake of sending one of the good news videos to somebody, and I really liked, at the time I liked Peggy Hall of The Healthy American, and she had explained how some of these outrageous things that happen on the news are not all what they appear to be. And it can actually calm you down quite a bit, where she shows the inconsistencies and how there was no research done, or how it was just put out there, and then the story starts to crumble when they discover it. So I made the mistake of sending it to a couple people who weren't able to listen to it right away, and thought I was sending them bad news because she had a title on there that sounded really scary. But the injury of stress goes even deeper than that, damaging our bodies on a genetic level. Now, there was an article out recently. If you've done any research, there was an article on how to protect your DNA and why you have to protect your DNA and what it has to do with you. And it isn't just what you hand on down to the next generation. It's something to do with your health today. And it says here, the ends of our tightly wound chromosomes are particularly sensitive to stress. And he goes on to tell more about that, and how Jane Austen, even though they didn't know the details of things like this, they knew that stress was causing them to age or to look unhealthy. It says, people that live under chronic stress have shorter telomeres, and that was the name of some ingredient in the chromosome, that sometimes look 10 years older than people with less stress in their lives. Okay, now let's talk about happiness, and how being happy can make you look so much. Makes your skin relax, makes you feel more youthful, and how important that is. But I want to just give you something about happiness that I heard, and that was, our happiness depends on our quality of thinking. And did you know that God taught us how to think? And when we have quoted these over and over, I love lists. I love all the lists in the Bible, and I like to go through and find something that's a list. And Philippians 4:8 certainly is one. Whatever's good, whatever's lovely, whatever's pure, whatever is just, and whatever's noble or honorable, or a good report. Think on these things. And there's lots of thinking or character building qualities that would occupy your mind. And that's why I think that the quality, our happiness depends on the quality of our thoughts. And so when we were little, we were taught, instead of fearing, we'd come home from school and tell our parents that, by the way, I did go to public school, but my children didn't, possibly because of my experience and observations. But we would come home and tell our parents that this terrible thing that was going to happen, and how we all had to get under our desks, or we all had to have a drill, and we all had to go here and go there. And my parents would say, because then we couldn't sleep, and they would say, you'll have to start thinking about something else. And that's where the song comes in, keep on the sunny side of life. And it might seem to some people that became more cynical over time, they would look at that as too simplistic, and that it wasn't very intelligent. But the people that learned to think on the bright side and think on the good things, their lives were guided by that. And so they were naturally attracted to whatever was lovely, whatever was good. The women were able to have a beautiful home life and a calm and peaceful home life and happy families. And were able to help guide their families in their destiny in life. But those that were all caught up in fear and anxiety got stuck thinking. You all know women maybe that are vital, that are in stuck thinking, and they're not making any progress in life because they've just started to get glued to the bad news. And it's not good for you. And so he says, Austen doesn't miss a biological beat. The characters who experience the most intense stress in her books look literally frazzled and aged beyond their years. They did a good job with this in the movies of the 1990s, of the Jane Austen movies. Mr. Woodhouse in Emma, for instance, he was a nervous man with a long-running relationship with stress. That's what she wrote in her book, Emma. He was a nervous man with a long-running relationship with stress. There is no rest for his nerves, and he looks a much older man than he actually is. You notice people that have gotten away from stress or somehow managed to deliver themselves from a job they hated or debt or something, start looking more youthful and more energetic and happier. Yet Maryanne proves an even bigger warning on the aging effects of stress. Starting the novel a vibrantly beautiful girl, her later Willoughby-induced stress takes on its physical toll. Stress affected every feature, giving her a hollow eye and sickly skin. Even lovable Edward and Mrs. Jennings can't help but notice that she is so altered. Her less than lovable brother-in-law is a bit blunter than that. Poor Maryanne. You would not think it, perhaps, but she was remarkably handsome a few months ago, quite as handsome as Eleanor. Now you will see it is all gone. But of course we know that the story had a happy ending, and just like Elizabeth Gaskell wanted all of her stories to have happy endings. If Austen's own life imitated her art, it's easy to explain that she was so interested in writing about stress and its damaging effects because she had a personal fight with it. And you know, she was a minister's daughter, and ministers get people in their homes that bring in fear and stress and unsavory conversation, and the kind you want to get up and go in the kitchen. And so, yes, of course, she was familiar with it. I wish that I could talk to you more, because I do have more to tell you, and I've got all these books sitting out here. Oh, this little book here was from the Dollar Tree many years ago, and it is, I'll just put the information on the page on which I have embedded this speech here, this lesson, and it's by the Clever Factory Incorporated from Nashville, Tennessee. It doesn't say who wrote it, but it has a few Bible verses in it, and it has experience this lady has had with tea, including the first time she ever had tea with anyone, which was in Australia. That's the same with me, too. I mean, a proper tea. Growing up on the homestead, we had tea, but in fancy teacups once in a while, but not the same as they did it there. So she talked about that, and she has recipes in it, and I will put the information on here, so maybe you could get yourself one. I don't know. It was distributed by the Greenbrier International from Chesapeake, Virginia, which runs the Dollar Tree. And I sure hope you can get one, because if you want to eliminate stress from your diet, if you read some of these light things that have still an emotional balance to them, they're very, very good for you, and you'll have a lot more clarity once you've read things like this. They're very unstressed, and yet people would look at it and say that's not important stuff. Well, back in the day, people thought that the news media was not important things, and they warned people not to spend too much time listening to it because it took their minds away from, quote, important things. Isn't that interesting? And even the public school was treated like that, because people that went to public schools, those were called common schools, and most people preferred to educate their family themselves or have a tutor, but they didn't want their children going to the public schools because it, quote, took their minds away from important things. And I'm sure it was the family farm, the business, and their spiritual life. And so I'm just going to read you a couple poems here by Edgar A. Guest. Now, remember, I told you his history was apparently after, I believe it was either the Depression or the war, one of the world wars. He came to America from England, and he became he worked for a newspaper, and his job was to find human interest stories. And I don't know if you know what that is, but little town local papers always had, besides just the hard news that gave you stress, they'd have a recipe in there, or they'd have some kind of human interest story or some other thing in it. And he hunted down poems and stories for his part in it, and then eventually decided that it'd be just better if he wrote his own. It'd be a lot easier. So I wanted to read a couple of his poems here, and this one's called Education. I think that I would rather teach a child the joys of kindness than long hours to spend poring o'er multiple and dividend. How differing natures may be reconciled rather than just how cost accounts are filed. How to live bravely to its end rather than how one fortress to defend, or how gold coins once gathered can be piled. There is an education of the mind which all require and parents early start, but there is training of a nobler kind, and that's the education of the heart. Lessons that are most difficult to give are faith and courage and the way to live. So I'll try to put that in on the page in which this video is embedded. And I want to read this one called My Goals. I'll also try to put that on for you. A little braver when the skies are gray, a little stronger when the road seems long, a little more of patience through the day, and not so quick to magnify a wrong. A little kinder, both of thought and deed, a little gentler with the old and weak, swifter to sense another's pressing need, and not so fast the hurtful phrase to speak. I talked to you about hasty, sharp replies and how that's a big barrier. It leaves people cold and distant from you when you indulge in that. So as we grow more vital, let's grow more gracious. These are my goals, not flung beyond my power, not dreams of glory, beautiful but vain, not the great heights where buds of genius flower, but simple splendors which I ought to gain. These I can do and be from day to day along the humble pathway where I plod, so that at last when I am called away I need not make apologies to God. Those are the two poems that I most wanted you to hear today as I leave. And I hope that you will keep close to Christ in the meantime. If I'm able to come again, keep praying for me so that I can come more consistently and more often. I love you, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.